Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. I'm Nick Zulovich, part of the team at Cherokee Media Group and senior editor at AutoFin Journal and Subprime Auto Finance News. In today's webinar, Idea to Profitability, a candid entrepreneurial discussion. We have a great session in store for you today, brought to you by Payix, together with Visa. But before we go into today's session and we get started, I want to go over just a couple of quick housekeeping items for today's session. We are recording today's webinar and we'll make the recording available to you as soon as possible. So keep watch of your inbox for a message containing a link to it. You'll be in listen-only mode for today's webinar, but we will reserve some time after hearing from our four experts for a Q&A segment. You can submit questions at any time using the chat function here on the Zoom platform. So enough from me. Let's get right to our guests for today's webinar. Our guests include Dana Bowers, founder and chief solution architect with VenMinder, Chris Chestnut, Chief Executive Officer and co-founder of Payix, Joel Kennedy, Director of Business Development with Northridge Software, and Stephanie Hansen, President of Tricolor Financial. Everyone, thank you so much for joining us. And to start out our conversation, we'll be let the ladies get started here. We'll begin with Dana and then continue on with Stephanie, and then we'll certainly want to hear from Chris and Joel as well, along with giving a little bit of background about yourself. How did you come up with your big idea? Dana, let's begin with you.
Okay, well, thank you very much. And hello, everybody. So I'm Dana Bowers, founder of VenMinder. I've actually had a couple of companies, but today most of my responses will just be focused around my current company, which is VenMinder. So that idea actually spawned out of my previous company, which was iPay Technologies. iPay provided, and still does today, electronic bill payment to financial institutions. So think if you bank online, you pay your bills online, is probably iPay. That's actually facilitating all those payments that you register. But during the time at iPay, since we were serving financial institutions which are highly regulated and have strong regulatory responsibility for compliance and due diligence to third parties, where they outsource services where non or confidential, non-public, and very private information is shared with those third parties. We were one of those types of vendors. And so we had a lot of obligations to our clients to demonstrate to them that we were just as compliant as they were on an information security, privacy, business continuity, cyber type of applications. And so that ended up just becoming sort of like a business inside of a business in order to satisfy all of our clients' requirements. And it was during that time that we realized that we could probably help other third parties at some point do the same thing and minimize the effort and actually serve the clients well. So it was from that process of doing that inside of that company that VenMinder spawned out. And VenMinder is a business that helps financial institutions, but other industries as well, in managing all of their critical and high-risk third parties, either for regulatory and compliance reasons or just for good business practice reasons.
Excellent. Thank you, Dana. Stephanie, let's move on to you.
Sure. So I'll probably spend most of my time today talking about DeFi, since that's probably what most people are familiar with. And the idea for DeFi in particular was a result of a girlfriend making fun of another idea that I had. So I was trying to decide what to do with my next steps in my career. She was pushing me on what I love to do. And I told her my big idea. And she said I was crazy, it would never make any money. And so she continued pushing what he loved to do. And I love origination systems, I love decision engines. and that whole kind of process flow. I had worked for AmeriCredit for 10 years, Sixth Gear. I'd helped ACA and Provenir and some other places. And so I had dreamed for years about a system with tons of flexibility and wanted to build it. So we came up with the idea of DeFi, where we would build the origination system for other companies, and they would have kind of the best of buy versus build. They would get all the flexibility of building, but have a company behind it. And so she encouraged me to go for it, and actually put some money into the company along with another girlfriend, and that's where we came up with it.
Exciting background. Good. Chris, how about for you? I think you might still be muted, sir.
Sorry about that. Yeah, so like all good stories, it starts with, I was at a party with some friends. No, seriously, I had a lot of experience over my career with collections, working at AmeriCredit and in my last company, Innovate Auto. And so this idea of basically piecing together a solution that would allow small non-bank lenders, middle market lenders, be able to communicate and ultimately collect a payment via mobile app from borrowers, was sort of always in the back of my mind. The piece of it I really didn't have a good grasp on was the payment processing angle. So again, I was literally at a party talking to a friend that I've had for many years that had a lot of experience in payment processing, kind of kicking around this idea about, hey, the tech would work like this. And then he was talking about how the payment processing would work like that. And then the next thing you know, we kind of submitted the idea, talked to some friends of ours, Joel Kennedy being one of them, and kind of floated the idea past him. And it seemed like there was a demand in the market for something that kind of was in line with what we had planned to build. And so from there, we just went out and kind of like Stephanie mentioned, talked to some friends, raised some capital, and got our MVP built and launched in 2017. So yeah, idea just, I think the key is, and you've kind of heard it from the other panelists here, it really comes from interacting with other people, right? All of us kind of have ideas from time to time about different stuff, but I think it's when you really start to interact with other folks, people that you know and trust, and start bouncing those ideas off them, at least for me, that really made the thing stick, that grew into an eventual business.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you, Chris. Well, Joel, how about for you? How did you come up with your big idea?
Yeah, I'd love to say I could take credit for it, but like a lot of ideas, I mean, you write it down, you run with it, it's kind of becomes your idea. So back in 2018, I was working for a subprime lender here in Southern California, and the Great Recession hit. We got our line pulled. The parent company didn't want to put in equity, so we were shutting down. But at that time, I had a partner who was working in the East Coast branch, and we were running originations together. And we had put together some ideas, some thoughts about, hey, I think we're really missing this market of the independent dealer to the buy here, pay here. There was a gap there that we thought we could put together a program to really solve it. And we had enough information and experience with using the starter interrupt device and the GPS. We thought that was, place that on every single loan. We could distinguish ourselves with expanding into a more risky territory, but hacking it a little bit, right? Putting a little bit of a hedge on it. And it took us a little time. We had to go through a couple of iterations. Obviously, there's different things that kind of distract you, but we were able to get it moving and build it up, took on initial investment, made it for a couple of years, and then took on the big private equity investment. The thing that I would say that's a little different for me and probably the other folks on this call is I went kicking and screaming the whole way. I did not want to be an entrepreneur. I wanted to just get a job and keep running operations and having fun, because I had come off of a string of 2 or 3 jobs that I really, 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 really loved. And I just kind of wanted to keep that going. So, but obviously you're in these kind of situations where there's no market, right? Look at people in hospitality or restaurant or travel. If you're on that bottom part of the K-shaped recovery, it's going to be a little while. You might have to kind of realize that the cheese has moved. And that's what I realized. And I was fortunate enough to have a good partner and some people that supported me throughout the endeavor.
Very well said. And indeed, the pandemic certainly has created challenges for all of us, to say the least. Well, let's continue on with you, Joel, and then Chris, and then we'll go back to Stephanie and Dana, kind of reverse engineer, to use a phrase. Joel, what were some of the good and bad things you faced, as you kind of referenced a bit already? Joel, we'll continue with you, and then Chris, will turn to you next.
Yeah, I'll start with the bad because I always want to finish on a positive note. Financing, right? Financing the business is very difficult when you're in a lending business. You're lending money. Okay. So you can't do anything without that money. People want to give you money, but they want to make sure that it's just in the asset. Well, then you have nothing to speak for operations, and you have no equity. So you can't get any bank leverage. And that's when things really take off. So financing is a pain in the neck, and you're dealing with people, and people are not dogs. So they're not always going to love you when you come in the door at night. Vendors, look, vendors can really help you, but one of the big disappointments for me was you go through these pretty drastic market cycles as subprime lenders, and you have to lean on your vendors from time to time to say, you gave me this whole pitch about we're going to be partners. We're in this together, right? We're going to share the spoils. We're going to live and die together. But when it's a downtime and I need some love, I'm trying to get some concessions so I don't have to lay off people, certain and folks on the phone that I've done business with, certainly we're always rising to the occasion. It's the other bigger systems that, you're just so many points removed from anybody that really cares about you. It was a disappointment. And so that really informs how I go about vendor selection nowadays. I really vet that out. And then having to school everybody. Look, whether it's money people or, people who are supposed to know a whole heck of a lot more than you and puff out their chest, you can kind of quickly and easily see through that. You don't have to be Marcus Aurelius or, one of these other guys to figure that out. You take a lot of time educating these people that are kind of looking to partner with you or give you money or whatever. And it can become exhausting because they're constantly digging in on something that they think is going to be an issue. And you're sitting there saying, I get it. I get it. You're trying to be the smartest guy in the room, but I'm telling you, this is not the right path to go down. If you really want to see where the dead bodies are, let me help you out, bro. But you can't force them because there's not that trust. And this is the process, right? They're trying to build and establish that trust through questioning, but it can be a bit fatiguing when you're doing this for half the day, running around up and down Madison Avenue, trying to get money. And you're like, oh crap, I have to decision some applications. I have actual work to do. So it can be very fatiguing. On the good side, I'll be quick and I'll just say, I really enjoy the opportunity within an entrepreneurial scenario to behave in a multidisciplinary fashion. I don't know anything about compliance coming in, but I sure know a whole heck of a lot now. And, there were so many things. It was like, Joel, do you know anything about this? Nope. I have no idea what a certificate of registration is or this or that, but I will go find out and I'll do it. And you know what? If I do a crap job, I'm the only one really looking over my shoulder, and I'm used to dealing with my own crappy results anyway. So, and then just the other thing is the fruits of the labors. Like there's such a direct path between your investment, between you doing the work and then seeing the fruits of those labors come to life. And that was really enjoyable. Obviously the people as well we've worked with and been able to partner with and even develop internally a number of people. And it's so nice to look back at many of these folks. Their careers really flourished. These are people that are now holding senior positions at other bigger banks and institutions. And I thought, it's great to see.
Excellent. Very astute comments, and definitely going to borrow that dog analogy that you just made as well. Chris Chestnut, what have been some of the good and bad things that you have faced on your journeys?
Yeah, I'll kind of go in reverse of Joel and pick up on what he was just saying. I think one of the most rewarding things for me in my entrepreneurial effort has been, working with people that I really care about, I really respect, and see them, really grow beyond what, they believed or I believed were their own capabilities, right? And so, building something together with someone when you kind of go into it and don't really know how you're going to do it or don't know what comes next because there's a lot of things you've not thought of or you've never faced before. And then going through that process together, again, with people that you're really close with, that you trust, and then being on the other side of that and really seeing how that person's developed, seeing, the successes that you had together, for me personally has been one of the most rewarding things. I mean, I really care a lot about the folks I work with. I invest a lot of time in those relationships, and I really feel like what I'm in it for ultimately is being able to share those experiences with folks I care about. And that for me is kind of the big reward. The bad thing, I mean, I don't really know if there was anything really bad. I would say that we kind of faced here at Payix. I would say that this is my second company. I was part of a startup evolution, and the last company I had a lot more help than I did this one. And I think the hard things were just kind of not not knowing all the stuff that you're going to have to face, especially in a CEO role. Thinking about stuff, whether it be shareholders or employees or PEO system, just all the stuff that goes with running a company, especially in the in the first part of the startup where you've taken an idea and you now kind of have it off the ground, you've got some capital raised, and really being able to get all the things put in place, vendors like Joel was mentioning, employees, those things are hard. They're hard for folks that have never faced them before, and I think that as entrepreneurs, we all sign up for the hard things, and that's kind of what we understand. But going through it in real time when there's consequences and you're on deadlines, and that magnifies sort of the impact. And so I think for me personally, the hardest thing was kind of being forced and thrown in to swim with some situations that probably I wasn't prepared for. But again, fortunately, I had some great people around me, folks that have been, a lot of people on this call, frankly, that have been through stuff before and kind of helped guide me. So yeah, so that's kind of the good and the bad, as I see it.
Thank you, Chris. That's so great to hear about the supportive infrastructure that's out there, and it also seems as if it's a constant learning mode for entrepreneurs. Stephanie, how about for you? What have been some of the good and bad things that you faced going from startup to success?
Sure. So bad times or challenging times, certainly anytime I was stressed about sometimes it felt like you were never going to find a new client. Chris and Joel both rejected me multiple times before we became good. But those days were very stressful when you're new and you're early and people want you to have 10 clients on before they'll sign with you or they want to see things. Those are incredibly stressful. I mean, there was a time between our second and third client where I thought, we're literally never going to get another client. And then you fast forward to having 100 clients and it seems silly, but those are stressful days. And anytime money's tight, it's stressful. But probably the worst for me was when a client was upset, that I always wanted to fix it and make it so clients never got upset. And I always wanted to change the process and change everything. And I knew that when you make it through kind of a yucky time with a client, that things are stronger and the partnership is stronger. But I just always wanted to exceed expectations. So it was very painful for me when we missed expectations or there was a miscommunication. On the good times, certainly some of the best moments were when clients or potential clients got excited and they got it. And sometimes selling to them, they would get the vision better than I could. I remember we were selling to our second, who ended up being our second client, and they took over the meeting and started basically creating all our marketing messages for us. And they just really, really got it. And so I loved it when people shared the vision and got the vision and got excited about it. I loved it when team members got behind the vision and they were as good or better than me at living it and sharing it, because then you don't feel the pressure and everybody gets excited about it. And I think I got to see those come together at our summits. So during our summits, our team and our clients would get together, and I loved the relaxed environment where people could get to know each other and kind of just spread the vision without me having to do anything. And then with, we kind of shared equity with, it was very, very split, like tons of people had equity in the company. And so certainly when there was, when we bought out friends and family that invested in us early on and they got to make, a lot of money back, or some people that took chances with us early on and were working for just equity, and then they got to make, money to put their kids through college and stuff, that was a good time.
Thank you, Stephanie. That's some wonderful illustrations and imagery about what happens behind the scenes in an entrepreneurial situation. For you, Dana, how about the stresses, the successes, the good and the bad that you've experienced as well?
Well, with VinMinder, we actually launched the company before we exited iPay. And, we thought that this will be fine. Here's the idea, here's the inspiration, and we can just hire a team to manage it, create it, and execute. Well, that never works. I've learned that now. And so that company ran for, I don't know, I don't remember exactly, but, couple, 3 years anyway, before we had our iPay exit. And we were just on the board and guiding and advising. And we knew we had some challenges with management. After we sold iPay is when we were able to have the bandwidth then to come over and actually dive in to VinMinder and figure out just, what is going on, what kind of condition it is. And that's when we discovered it was just not really in very good shape at that moment. And had to make the decision, well, what should we do? So we decided to, now that we had the bandwidth and we weren't ready to retire from the other exit, decided to invest the money, build out a platform, hire a new team. But what we discovered is that rather than a startup that we thought we were tackling, we actually ended up with a turnaround. And that I've had many companies that I've created and exited in my career, but for all of them, I was management, execution, everything from day one, literally starting from scratch. So I'd never had a situation where I had to take something and turn it around, and realized there were days when I literally said, I think this job's too big for me. I thought starting from scratch, no money, no customers, no platform, no nothing, was hard. That's nothing compared to turning around something that somebody else has already screwed up. And because, it just, that momentum is incredibly hard to turn back around the other day. On the good side, I sure did learn a lot in that process. I learned I don't ever want to do that again. So but just lots of, other great lessons too, right? In developing skill sets that, I didn't have, not knowing exactly, how to tackle certain things. So it was certainly a life lesson, but not one that I necessarily want to repeat.
Fascinating. That's very interesting experiences, Dana, as you described, trying to right the ship, so to speak, for a firm. Again, we thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Idea to Profitability, a candid entrepreneurial discussion with our special guests, who include Dana Bowers of VinMinder, Chris Chestnut of Payix, Joel Kennedy with Northridge Software, and Stephanie Hansen with Tricolor Financial. And to continue our discussion, Dana, we'll let you continue to have the floor here, and we'll continue our rotation with Stephanie, Chris, and Joel. Dana, again, when did you feel your business reached the first milestone that allowed you to relax? I guess stemming from what you just shared about the reconditioning, for lack of a better term, of the company. When did you kind of are able to exhale a little bit?
There is no such thing as far as I'm concerned in my book. I wish I knew what that looked like. If you are responsible, for a company, and its strategy and its success and, its exit, whatever that may look like, whenever it is, and you have mouths to feed and people to take care of, relax is not in your vocabulary. But to say, when I finally thought, well, I'll be dang, I think this may work, is when the very first, when we signed the very first tier 1 customer, which in our world was a very large bank above, $1 billion in assets. When we signed the first tier 1 bank for a 6-figure contract, that's when I was like, well, okay, I guess we're going to be able to do this after all. Because I was actually, about that same time, I was reading a story or an article somewhere, I could not tell you where it was, but where it said, signing enterprise, if you have signed, make sure I word this correctly, it's something to the effect of, you can't sign your first enterprise client by accident. That's, it's not even a blind squirrel finds a nut every now and then. That's not the case. It's, they are sophisticated enough that, that they would never have bought from you if it weren't applicable and valuable to them. So if you can sign one, you can sign 100. And that was just about the time that we found that we had signed this client, that I read that and realized, well, okay, I'm going to choose to believe that. And we're going to keep marching forward and assume we're going to sign another one, another one, another one. Now, they don't just, come spinning in the door. I wish it were that easy, but it's really slow and a very difficult uphill climb in the beginning. But now, it's not every day, but it's pretty common, that we sign enterprise. We probably sign more enterprise clients now than we do non-enterprise. But it was a real turning point.
Thank you, Dana, and congratulations on all of the client successes. Stephanie, how about for you? Maybe you have some other unique perspectives to share with knowing what DeFi Solutions, the journey that it made, that you were a part of. When did you feel business reached that milestone that allowed you to maybe have some celebration or some relaxation?
Yeah, I agree with Dana. I don't think there's ever a time where you relax. But for me, rather than around sales, it was anytime I was able to hire somebody to take over an area that used to be my sole responsibility, it gave me a little breath. And I remember so vividly a moment where I was in a hotel room. I was just about to have a breakdown, physically and mentally exhausted. I was doing sales, implementations, product ownership, working with the developers, reporting to investors. I was billing the clients out of Excel, all while traveling and being a single mom, going through a divorce. And I remember we brought on somebody to run product, and product is absolutely my favorite area. Like, nobody would have guessed I could hand over product to somebody, but probably a lot out of necessity. And I trusted the person. I was able to hand over product, and just to take a breath and have one thing not be you're still responsible for it, but you don't have to day in and day out take care of every single thing. And so I think each time I was able to hand over an area and be more strategic over it, but let the person handle the day to day, each of those I remember clearly taking a breath and being very thankful.
Thank you, Stephanie, and that's great to reference being able to bring teammates in. Certainly, an entrepreneur cannot function on an island by themselves. Need a great team around them as well. For you, Chris, Payix has certainly been on a positive trajectory. How about for you? When did you feel business reached that milestone that gave cause for celebration or whatever other emotion you want to
Yeah. Yeah, I think obviously we're all going to agree that you never really get to relax. I think my biggest step towards relaxation was probably moving to decaf. I think that was kind of a milestone for me. But honestly, I think when you think about starting a company and then you've actually started it and you're kind of going through the motions. I know for me at least that I always imagine this point in time in the future where if I had just accomplished this, like Dana mentioned, you get that first enterprise client, or you finally give away a portion of your job to someone else, as Stephanie mentioned. You kind of have this point in the on the horizon that you feel like once you reach that, then you made it, right? Then everything is going to get easier. Of course, it's a very naive thought because, as we all know, once you get to that point, it doesn't get any easier. It actually gets harder, right? And so, whenever you feel like you accomplish that milestone, typically the next one is even harder to get, than getting to that first one. And so, um, you know, for us, I felt, once we got to a solution, a product that we could scale, we had decent demand out of the gate, and so we were fortunate to have some great partnerships with folks that generated a lot of demand for our product. And so, our problem was having signed clients without necessarily a product ready to be delivered. And so, for me, it was kind of sitting there saying, okay, well, once we have a cohesive product that is in the market that I know that I can deliver to more than just one person, in 8 weeks worth of time, and I can actually scale this company. And so, it took us about a year to get to that point post launch. But I think for me, hitting that point, knowing that we had a viable, scalable product that I could meet demand that we had surfaced, allowed me to kind of refocus and kind of hit to that next point, which is really scaling the company.
Thank you, Chris. So you certainly hit on a element that I would guess many entrepreneurs strive toward, is having that scale and being able to grow in exponential ways. Joel, how about for you in your career? Been a part of company milestones. What was that emotional or experience like when you and your teammates reached a particular milestone?
Yeah, I think nothing new from what my colleagues have said here. I think when you hit these milestones of whether it's an investment or something, those are certainly big and they move the needle. You're able to like fill out your organization and do some other things that are going to help you grow and scale. But the other big point is, yeah, and I try to celebrate the little things. Hey, we got a state license here. We made it through an audit, no problems, or it was minimal. I think those things are cause for celebration as well. But, in terms of finding that time to relax and kick back, it's a bit of an illusion. You never stop looking for money. You never stop looking for threats and attacks to come at you. You can't control everything. That was really, for me, the big bottom line from this is, if it's outside of your control, it's outside of your control. And I realize that your constituents may have it in their mind that you're in control of the out of control stuff, but it's just ridiculous. So yeah, you can't really ever relax, and you got to keep hunting around.
Thank you, Joel. Well, certainly I've had a chance to ask questions of our experts here, but if you have one as well, just use the chat function here on the Zoom platform, and we'll get to a Q&A segment here in a few moments. But to round us out with our prepared questionnaires for our experts, Dana Bowers, Stephanie Hansen, Chris Chestnut, and Joel Kennedy. Dana, let's return to you, and then Stephanie, you as well. How did, if in fact there is a conclusion, how did your endeavor come to one, or is it an ongoing situation? Dana, we'll turn to you first, and then Stephanie next.
Vinminder's story is not done. We just raised 33 million, I think it was, in additional capital back in the fall. So that story is still going, and I'm sure there will be, a successful exit in our future. You should always be careful never to prescribe that. I want to exit in X amount of time, because then you'll make all the wrong decisions, to try to make that happen. And you just need to focus on building a good business, and exits happen when they're supposed to. But my last company that was the one that spawned, the idea for this company. That company we sold that to Jack Henry. I'm not sure if folks on this line would recognize that name. But sold that to them in 2010 for 300 million. But we did a recap prior to that. So it was sort of a stepping process. We were very fortunate. We never had to raise capital for that business, never had to raise one thin dime of capital. And then it built up very nicely, and we did a recap where we sort of, cashed out some of the original shareholders. I think Stephanie mentioned she'd done that as well, so that they could, get a very, very nice return on their exit. And then stayed, and then went to the last exit, which was, to a strategic buyer, where all existing shareholders sold out. So everybody was, very, very happy with that exit. So, we'll just see. If we're going to be that lucky again, or if we were a one-hit wonder with that company. We'll see.
Well, congratulations. That's a lot of zeros and commas to mention. Congratulations.
It was nice, yes. Thank you.
on all of that. How about for you, Stephanie? As we've shared in a previous conversation, kind of a transition time for you personally and professionally. Congratulations on newest endeavor here at Tricolor Financial. How about for you, making the changes in entrepreneurship?
Sure. Yeah. So I have, like Dana, started many things, but all of mine were failures except for Defy. And even after Defy, tried to transition into another startup with a product that we kind of learned was needed while at Defy, and that one failed too. So I guess for now I am a one-hit wonder. But for Defy specifically,
I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but I started things that failed too. So I'm not Midas. That's
full disclosure here.
You're doing awesome. Yes, and hopefully there'll be some great things in the future. But for Defy specifically, I think we merged with a competitor and hopes to take the best of both companies and products and help the industry exponentially. I am still an equity holder, so it's not over. I'm not leading it anymore, but still do have equity in Defy. So not fully over, but my leadership there is. So that continues on with the Sagent and the Defy products and bringing that together.
Very good. And again, congratulations. Chris, for you, certainly Payix is not in a conclusion mode by any stretch, but how would you state where you and your shop might be?
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that, anyone that starts a business obviously has dreams to have some financial success at the end of it. And, for Payix, we're still on that trajectory to meet that end. And, we've had a good year, and we can, looking forward to a good 2021. And so we'll see what the future holds. But I think this is my second startup. I was one of the co-founders at Innovate. And so I'll just reflect on that experience, Innovate Auto Finance, that is. I think what you kind of heard from the panelists here is that, being an entrepreneur is, one, not easy at all. It usually means you fail a lot until you find something that actually sticks. And also it means that even when you start to have success, so like for me personally at Innovate, I was my first entrepreneurial endeavor. I was working with guys. It was for them also their entrepreneurial first endeavor. And so, I felt like I did everything right. I felt like we made all the right decisions, and we had a lot of success. But, my exit from Innovate didn't necessarily go the way I at least dreamed of when we first started the company. And so I think, I had to personally wrestle with that, where did I go wrong, or what were the things I could have done different to potentially create a different outcome. Now, ultimately, I'm not complaining. It worked out great for me. Those guys were great, and it led me to start Payix. And so, again, no complaints. But I think it's important to communicate for anyone that might be listening that starting out on the entrepreneurial track. If you're in a job today, and you're working somewhere, and you feel like you've got this desire, this urge, or this draw to start your own business, and you've got an idea, I think all of us would say go for it. I mean, like, we were all in that situation at one point, and we all sort of, for one reason or another, stepped out and took that risk. But with that said, it's important to remember it doesn't always work out, and you need to be prepared to fail and be prepared to basically pick yourself back up, dust off, and start again. And so, that's basically what I had to deal with at Innovate, and of course, ultimately led me to Payix. And so, but anyone out there that is being pulled to start a company, getting into it, unfortunately means that you're going to be facing failure more times than not. So I think mentally being prepared for that, and honestly financially being prepared for that, is something to consider before you start.
Well, thank you, Chris, and certainly kudos to you for the perseverance that you have showed through your professional endeavors. And speaking of professional endeavors, Joel, your perspectives as well. You've referenced your past career stops as well. How would you approach what was like when either a conclusion happened, good, bad, or otherwise, or when a certain point of the company reached it?
Yeah. Yeah. So for me, it was more of a fact of the capital partner really was harvesting some pretty big wins in some other categories. And we just shrank in terms of importance relative to their entire portfolio. And private equity within non-prime auto has been a participant, but aside from us and one other that's down in Texas, I can't think of too many during that cycle that got funded and capitalized. So, I look at the big picture and think of all the good things that happened with that. And the fact is, at the time when the private equity guys wanted to go a different way, it was a good time for me to make a move. I was feeling a little fatigued. I get bored pretty easily. And, the beauty is that, I go through iterations. I'm on version 3.0 of myself right now. And that version just came out a couple months ago, to be honest. The pandemic did a number on me. I had to kind of rework everything. Right. And I look at the foundation that I built by going on sabbatical and doing a bunch of stuff with the National Automotive Finance Association. I wouldn't have these great connections, and I wouldn't feel this sense of purpose that I feel today. And it's just so great to come from one thing into another. I did a little consulting, got to know some people, took a couple jobs, ended up with Northridge in the middle of the pandemic. That was the one system that I had the full scale all the way through, from pretty much day one all the way through. And it's a system I could believe in, and I knew the people, and I believed in the company, and I thought I was going to get maybe a little consulting work out of it, and I got a job. And it's just so great to be able to get into that kind of situation. And I'm just as happy as can be, Nick. I've done a lot of things since that. And I think the big takeaway for me in terms of a conclusion is, there's things in your control. There's things that are out of your control. Know the difference between the two. Be authentic as you can. Somebody comes in all fully torqued and ready to fight. That doesn't mean you have to meet them at that same level. You can use the tools that you have. But I build on all these things, and I feel like I'm better for it. And shoot, I may get on a rocket again at some point. Hopefully I'll be the guy that's actually inside the rocket. I'm a little concerned about the folks that are, particularly the one that's holding on to the needle thing. That guy, it's not going to turn out well for him.
Indeed. Well, Again, if you do have a question for our experts, you can certainly use the chat function here on the Zoom platform. But again, each of our experts, Dana Bowers with Venminder, Chris Chestnut with Payix, Joel Kennedy with Northridge Software, and Stephanie Hansen with Tricolor Financial. Their contact information is there on the screen if you care to reach out to them exclusively to perhaps maybe bounce some ideas or whatever the case may be. Their contact information is there on the screen, and perhaps to round us out, Dana will continue with you, and then Stephanie and Joel and Chris is our great orchestrator of today's session. We'll let you have the last word, but any type of parting thoughts, where your source of energy and ambition comes from to be a successful entrepreneur, what you do to quote unquote keep the batteries charged or focused, or whatever direction you would like to take it. Dana, we'll begin with you, and Stephanie, continue on with you.
Well, okay, so I'm not sure this is going to be a popular opinion, but I do truly believe that you're just kind of born an entrepreneur or not. I didn't know. I certainly did not grow up, saying I want to be an entrepreneur. It just kind of happened. It really just kind of happened out as survivor, can't spit the word out, survival. Next thing I know, look, when I started my first company, I don't even think the word entrepreneur existed. I mean, I was just started my own business, and because I needed to and I had to. And but I just think it's all about risk tolerance, really. At the end of the day, I think that's what holds most people back, is their fear of everything that can go wrong, because things will go wrong, and nothing ends up being exactly the way you thought it was going to be when you got started. So I just think that you're just born with that risk tolerance. And if you're born with that risk tolerance, I think you're also just kind of naturally born with all the things that it requires, as well. The work ethic, I never shut down. And there are days when I literally can, walk out of the building. It's like, I don't even care if this place burns down today. I got to get out of here. I'm done. I'm done for the day. And then wake up the next morning and all's well again. You just right back at it. So you just, if you just don't have that always on 24 hours, because you eat, sleep, breathe it, but not because you tell yourself you have to, you just can't not do it. I just think you're born that way. You're just wired that way. And I don't think you can change it either. I remember my grandmother saying to me when I started my first business, she just was not really happy that I was doing that. And it's funny because in her own way, she was an entrepreneur. She was a hairstylist, had her own little salon. But she just was not happy because of all the hours it was taking and the time it took away from the family and all the sacrifices. And, and she said, can't you just go find like a real job and do that? And, and I was like, well, I guess, but, even if I had decided to go flip hamburgers at McDonald's, I'm so cursed. I'd probably be trying to figure out how I buy a franchise. It's just there. I can't not do it. So anyway, so if you're wondering if you should start your own business or not, it's not that everyone has those questions and you have to go through that process, but where you land is really just going to depend on how you're wired. That's my opinion.
Excellent. Well, Dana, stemming from your successes, it's obvious you were born with it. So
Oh, thanks.
congratulations again. Thank you. Stephanie, how about for you? What fuels your entrepreneurial engine, so to speak? What's continuing to fuel your passion for entrepreneurship?
Yeah, I agree with Dana, even if we're both not popular now. I think you're born with it. I think from the time I was 5, I was always trying to start clubs and charge people to be part of my club, which nobody wanted to pay to be part of my club. So it was a little embarrassing. I offered like snacks and everything, but I couldn't, it was a small community. So so I think and I was going to start a designing thing when I was 7, and I'm a horrible designer, but I drew stuff on paper and pasted it up in my room and thought that was something. So I think your mind's always going. You're always born with it. For me, it's I've had to find I just have to have my life integrated. So I agree with 24/7. That just, to me, there isn't an 8 to 5 work and then a kid time. And I don't know if I screwed up my kids because of that, but life's just integrated. All 24 hours are integrated. And so when I was dating my current husband, he said, it's crazy because at noon, you don't know whether Stephanie's in the office or whether she's picking the kids up lunch or whether she's doing this or doing that, because there was no such thing as set hours. So I think that actually helped me cope with the amount of stress and hours of being an entrepreneur, that I could just make it work. And we actually, when we built the company, did very much the same thing. It was very fluid. You needed to get your job done, but there weren't necessarily set hours, and you may be working from home, you may be working from there. So benefit of a single mom running a company, I guess, is that there's more flexibility there. But the big thing for me that I think I was always born as an entrepreneur. I never felt like I was born to do sales and or marketing or anything like that. I felt like I was a product person, a numbers person. And it's starting Defy, my friend wasn't able to join me at the beginning and didn't come until a couple of years later. And so I had to do sales. And I think you just have to be okay with rejection, and you have to be okay with just continuing to get up and continuing to ask. And I joke about Joel and Chris, but the fact is they didn't say yes to me when I went and pitched it to them right away, right? And we ended up being great partners and great clients and everything else, but it didn't happen the first time I asked. And so if you expect things to happen the first time you ask or the second time you ask, that's just not how it goes. And so there has to be a lot of rejection, a lot of conversations, a lot of taking that rejection and learning how to pitch it better and waiting for the right timing. And so that was definitely something that I learned, that we all, if we're passionate enough, can do sales, even if we don't think that we can, but you just can't give up. You just have to keep going.
Excellent. Thank you, Stephanie. And before we get to a couple of closing thoughts from Joel and Chris as well, an excellent question has come in from one of our attendees, and certainly open it up to the floor if each of you would like to address it. And it was mentioned in passing by each of you, but if you could specifically address the hiring process, finding great employees and teammates to join your entrepreneur endeavors. What are some of the key qualifications you look for in finding an employee and who can be successful and help to lift the entire organization? Open it up to the floor. What do you look for in finding employees who will lift the entire organization?
I'm going to jump in and grab this one because I want to reflect on something Stephanie told me a couple of years ago. And so that's a great question, because I think one of the hardest things that you have to do as an entrepreneur and as you grow a business is obviously, and we've all kind of talked about it, is finding good people, right? Finding the person that you can give responsibility or you can pass something on to for something you're very passionate about, and know and trust that they'll do it as good as you would, or at least attempt to do it as good as you would. I remember a couple of years ago, I was having lunch with Stephanie, and we were at a pivotal point, Payix, and she was the CEO of Defy. And so anyone I could talk to that had success, I was very interested in their perspective. And something she said to me stuck with me from that point forward, which is that at some point as an entrepreneur, you outgrow your network, right? You outgrow the people that you know that can, you can bring in that you trust, that you have some experience with, that can actually, help you grow your vision and your dream. And, for me, and she was talking about how she's, what do you do at that point when you don't know someone that can do something and you have to go out and find someone organically or bring someone in that's a stranger? And I think, it's a very difficult thing to face as an entrepreneur, to find someone that you believe and can trust can do the job. And there's a lot of risk to that. I mean, a lot of us have built relationships and networks that we've leveraged to get to this point in our careers. And, when you need to go to that next level and don't have someone that that you can tap, it's very hard to fill that role, and it creates a lot of stress. And so I would say, hiring people, finding talent is probably to this day one of the most difficult aspects of my job. And it's something I think none of us, or at least for myself, really thought about going into it. But it is demanding and it's difficult. And when you make the wrong hire or you bring someone in that isn't a good fit, it's extremely painful and difficult to write that course. And so, yeah, anyone in a position of hiring, I would say obviously pay close attention to it and really vet people and vet candidates well, before you trust them with part of your dream.
Well said, Chris. Certainly, as you referenced, trust is one of the most crucial elements to any relationship, business or otherwise. Anything else from any of the other panelists regarding hiring and finding personnel?
It's almost like finding people who are passionate early on is difficult, but it's almost a harder culture change when you've grown so much that you're not looking for all entrepreneurial types that are similar to you, and you have to grow and scale and find a different type of person. But I would say build a great culture, be passionate about what you're doing. That attracts other people when you don't know somebody. Your culture, both internally and externally. For me, I needed people that I could work well with. So you could have an incredibly smart person, incredibly good, but if we didn't work well together, then that just wasn't a good fit. Somebody who is a self-starter. We had plenty of, when you're an entrepreneur, you don't need somebody who needs tons and tons of training. You want somebody who gets in and figures out how to get the licenses and how to do this and how to do that. And then be okay to be wrong and let people go and let them move on, because it's not good for them to stay there and it's not good for you.
Well said. Well said. Well, we'll continue with our closing thoughts here. Joel, continue with you, along with literally running. What else continues to fuel your passion for entrepreneurship? Joel, we'll turn back to you, and then Chris will have you with the last word. Joel.
Wow. So fueling the passion, at this point, I feel like it's a little bit, I can be a little bit more discriminating with, what I kind of throw my weight behind, or what I decide that I kind of want to invest in, and the time commodity. It's very cliche, but it's so true. I'm looking at, my age. I'm looking at the amount of time I think I can be relevant. You want to keep on top of the skill set and all that, but the time is just so important. So, for me nowadays, it's about just making sure that if I'm going to put my time and effort behind something, that it's something I really believe in. I don't even need to make sure that all the bets that I take are ones that I know are surefire winners. That's a philosophy I never quite got. I mean, there are some people out there who will sit there and evaluate opportunities and do mental calculus on what the odds are that it's going to be successful or not. All they want is just wins on the scoreboard. I've got no use for that. That's never been who I am. But yeah, I'm a little more discriminating with my time, and I do block time for me and the kids. I block time for myself now. And, if I got to work a little extra here and there, but some things hit the cutting room floor. Nick, I used to write a lot of articles. I don't have time for articles anymore, but I got a podcast, so I get that outlet, and I'm getting more content out faster. And, so I don't know, I kind of went all over the map there, but I think the big difference for me nowadays is that in the past, when you're the kind of sole drum that's beating to make the venture work or not, you can't take your eye off the ball. And so there are sacrifices that have to be made, as Stephanie mentioned. Nowadays, I sit there and look at it a little bit more holistically, and I say, I'm willing to take risks. I'm willing to do different things, but you're going to get a certain percentage of Joel. and, calling me on New Year's Day or all this other stuff, it better be that Rome is burning, because otherwise, it's not what I signed up for.
A lot of great perspectives there, Joel. Excellent. And certainly no matter what the driver's license might say, you're definitely young looking to say the least.
You're too kind.
Chris Chestnut, thank you to you and Payix together with Visa for assembling this great cadre of entrepreneurs, yourself included, for this discussion. Round us out here. What fuels your passion? What parting thoughts on entrepreneurship you would like to leave?
Yeah, no, thank you, Nick. And I just want to thank everyone on the panel today. It's been an honor knowing you and working with you, and actually being in your company on this panel is very humbling. And so thank you very much for your time. I think for me, it we kind of alluded to it, and I mentioned it here today. It kind of goes back to the people, and I don't just mean the people that are part of your company or the people that have share your passion and your vision, but the other people around you that, friends, and, for example, my wife, has been extremely supportive, and, I couldn't have done all the things I've done without her support. And there's other friends that, don't have a direct role in the company that really, don't contribute to, the success, the business success, but nevertheless help me survive the day, that are there for me when I need a break or need to escape. And so I think at the end of the day, really having a great network of people like the folks on this panel that you can call up, and share a problem with or share a laugh with. I think that really is what keeps me going. And without that, I don't think I could have gotten to the point where I am today. So I think at the end of the day, the relationships and the people really, really matter. And so with that said, I want to thank the people on this call, and I'm really, really grateful for your attendance and your participation today and your thoughts. Just listening to you guys talk has helped me. Thank you.
Well, very good. Well, thank you, Chris. And as mentioned, as he just referenced, certainly want to have this dialogue continue. Each of our experts, their contact information is there on the screen. Dana Bowers with Venminder, Chris Chestnut with Payix, Joel Kennedy with Northridge Software, and Stephanie Hansen with Tricolor Financial. To echo Chris's sentiment, thank you to each of you for sharing your successes, your perspectives, and inspiration to no matter the industry, a sense of entrepreneurship. Thank you to each of you.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great
Thanks,
afternoon.
Nick. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you so much for joining us. And on behalf of all of us at Cherokee Media Group, we thank you for joining us, and we look forward to having you again next time.